Hello, my friends. I wanted to start out and just say good morning, but I realized that when you're listening to this, it may not be the morning time. I'm in Austin, Texas. As some of you may know, my name is Katie Taylor. I'm a certified child life specialist. And this morning, as I prepare to release this episode this week, I want to bring up a conversation that I was having with another mom that I've interviewed before. And she brought up to me some feedback about an interaction she had with a child life specialist. And I said on an Instagram reel that as child life specialists, we often get a ton of positive feedback. So that may sound kind of like really not humble or very cocky, but the truth is it's amazing. And we're often told, we're so glad that you're here. We didn't know that this job existed. I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you. And it's one of, of course, admittedly, one of my favorite parts of being a child life specialist is getting to impact families and help transform their experiences in healthcare. But we don't get it right 100% of the time, just like any other person in any other profession. And this mom was amazing and shared with me that she had a child life specialist come into the room and start doing some medical play with her child who was having a difficult time with procedures. And for those of you who are just joining us for the first time, child life specialists are psychosocial care experts who are experts in family systems and child development and integrate what we know about things like play and coping into the healthcare system to help families thrive. Now, this was a pretty typical intervention that a child life specialist may do for a child who's having a hard time. But what the mom was describing to me is that her child has intellectual disabilities and doesn't do any imaginary type of play. So this particular intervention was not only not effective, but made the mom feel like, I don't even know if they know or understand my daughter. And to go even a little bit further, what it was doing was actually taking up time about some things that could be helping the family. Things like identifying the right IV or vein team to come in and place an IV. Or does the mom want a break during the next IV and the child life specialist can stay in? So I thought that feedback was incredibly helpful and just something that I wanted to share. That whether we are clinicians or child life specialists or parents, we have to make sure we're getting to know the people in front of us. In particular, I've been very excited to share this episode with you. This is a mom. Her name is Jessica, and she and I actually met at the American Academy of Pediatrics conference. And I walked by her booth and was like, I need to know this lady. And then come to find out, her dad is actually her co-founder. And if for those of you who don't know, my dad is my co-founder. And so there are probably a lot of stories that we could share about that and that our dads could probably share about us. But I was equally excited to get to introduce you to Jessica, who is a mom of a child with DiGeorge syndrome. And fun fact, our intern who worked on this episode, she is actually in her internship right now, and she was working with her supervisor and was about to go in and meet a child with DiGeorge syndrome, and her supervisor said, do you know anything about this diagnosis? And she was immediately able to say, yes, I've listened to a mom share her story. I love, love, love when students are able to hear these stories firsthand from parent experiences. But I digress. What I was excited to talk with Jessica about is over the past 200 episodes, we have heard parents talk about 4 different ways of coping with the stress of a diagnosis. One is this initial shock and disbelief that initially parents may feel a sense of like, this news in particular is startling, it's not expected, and of course parents can struggle to really accept the reality of the situation. Another way we've heard parents express how they feel when they get a diagnosis for their child goes to fear and anxiety. So immediate concern about the illness, the prognosis, what those feelings, they may cause stress or anxiety for both the family, the parent, and the child. They may worry about the treatment process, the impact on family life, and the long-term health outlook for their child. Third theme that we have seen emerge as parents have spoken to us is, as you can expect, sadness and grief. We talk a lot about grief on this podcast, and it's not always grief as it relates to bereavement or death. but just this inherent sadness, this grief that lives alongside you. It can be grieving a diagnosis, grieving a life they thought that they may have, and now everything has changed. But what we do know about grief is that it's often a process and looks very different for people. And then the fourth theme that we hear emerge is this almost acceptance and hope. And this can come at any different part of kind of finding out about the diagnosis. But it's this parent response that gets to hope. We finally have answers. It doesn't mean that I'm happy about the situation or I'm happy about the diagnosis, but it means that we now have a name for it. I can start finding support, gathering information, and become a confident and effective caregiver. So I talk about these 4 different ways of coping with diagnosis that we've seen and heard parents talk about on this podcast. And I'm excited to share with you kind of the ins and outs and the ebbs and flows that Jessica felt after their many, many, many year discovery into finding out her child's diagnosis. If you love this episode and you have not listened to any others, other episodes this reminds me of are episode 185, which is JR's story. It took them numerous years to find a diagnosis. Megan's story, and that's episode 115, a son with Williams syndrome. Mom often felt like she was being dismissed, but continued to be an advocate in finding out the resource and the diagnosis that her family needed. Episode 92, which is the dad's perspective. If you are at all aware of the Medical Mom podcast world, then you know about my very good friend, Effie. She does the Once Upon a Gene podcast, but I got to interview her husband, Casey. She actually asked me, will you interview my husband? And so in this, we talk about the 2 parents that are in this family and their complete different reactions and their complete different reactions to the same diagnosis at the same time. And that was episode 92. And then last but not least, episode 64, Misha's story, a daughter with the triplication of genes on chromosome 15q. She talks a lot about the grief and sadness that came along once she found out the diagnosis for her child. So I'm so happy that you're here. I feel like we're really getting into the flow of this 2024 new podcast where we're going even deeper into parent experiences and common themes that emerge. And I am just so grateful that you're here. Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Child Life on Call. This podcast is a safe place for parents to share their stories about what it's like to have a child that has a medical experience, diagnosis, disease, and or everything in between. We know there's power in sharing stories and that power multiplies when you can listen to other parents who have walked a similar path to yours. Giving and getting advice is great, but hearing how another parent navigates the complexities and nuances of healthcare is even better. As a child life specialist, my role is to support, validate, and provide emotionally safe spaces for kids and their families, and I am so honored to be on this journey with you. In addition to parent stories, we sprinkle in some expert episodes every now and again that have content for both parents and professionals in the field of healthcare, all with the mission to empower parents to be confident advocates and partners with the care team during healthcare experiences. We're so glad you're here.
My name is Jessica Siddi. I'm a mother of 3. I'm also a paralegal, and I own my own company, Puffaluffs Inc, which actually originated from my son. So this is how I met Katie, and this is how we came to know each other through the AAP National Conference in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And that
Okay.
was a
So
great experience.
it was such a good experience. So the American Academy of Pediatrics, it was your first time being there too, right?
Yeah, to do the big expos. Yes, that was my first time there. Yeah.
It was insane. Like the amount of people that came through. I'm so glad that I went. Did you get like a lot of good contacts and all that
We
good stuff?
did. We definitely did. We learned a lot because it was our
Yeah.
first time. So we learned a lot of what to do, what not to do. But we did get a lot of great contacts, and hopefully we'll be able to get into the hospital soon and, kind of help these kids out a little more.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as I met you, I saw Puffaluffs. I was like, okay, we have to have you on the podcast. And then you also shared with me that you do the company with your dad.
I do. It's a family run company. It's me and my father. He actually came up with the Puffaluff. Well, let me tell you what they are. They're
Yeah.
IV pole accessories. They hang on IV poles, and any attachment to an IV pole can go right through the middle, and it attaches on the top and in the back. And it's actually like a big stuffed animal to make the kids feel more comfortable and less intimidated by all the
Yeah.
medical equipment around them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
so I'm going all over here, but my
Yeah.
dad my son was born 28 weeks preemie, and he had an IV pole at home. So my dad came up with the idea to cover the pole because he couldn't stand looking at just the pole. And that's where Puffaluffs was born. And it made a
Mm.
huge difference for my family and my nephews and just everyone around.
You know what? I have never considered that before. That actually it may not, I mean, the child, of course, will benefit from seeing something that's less scary and less anxiety provoking. But it's
Mhm.
probably also like a welcome change for the adults in the room and the family and the caregivers to not have to stare at a medicine bag IV pole all the time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. It's so sterile looking, and it's scary, and it's just people come in your house and they're thrown off by it, or they're like a little put off, and it's just, it makes it more comfortable, part of the room. It's a friend.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the beginning about when your son was born and were you expecting him to come at 28 weeks and what was that experience like?
Oh, I was not expecting him at all. It was
Yeah.
actually Christmas Eve. I was at my parents', we were having dinner, and I felt contractions, and I was like, it's way too early. My mom's actually a nurse. So I went over to her and I was just like, maybe what's happening? I'm feeling pain. And she's like, no, it's too early. Braxton Hicks. And I'm like, okay, sure. So later the day, I went home, maybe 4 in the morning. It's getting closer, like the contractions are going closer, and I'm feeling the pain. It's getting more intense. And I was just like, something's wrong. I
Yeah.
went to the bathroom. I felt like I had to push. I started bleeding, and I left from there. I thank God lived not even a block away from the hospital. So
Wow.
my husband took me 4:29 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning to Nyack Hospital. We went there, and I almost had him in the hall. I almost had him in the hallway. And oh my God, I'll never forget.
Yeah.
And he was born at 5:29. That's the time he was born, not even an hour. He was there. I heard him cry, and then they took him. right to NICU.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, because at 28 weeks, you're not even going to monthly appointments yet.
Mm-mm.
You're
I didn't
just
even
you're
do
just
the blood test. Where you go for diabetes and you do the whole sugar test. I didn't even get there yet.
yeah.
Yeah. It was a huge surprise.
Yeah, that's a lot. And I'm sure the staff around you, were they frantic or did they kind of help you calm or what was that like?
Well, it was Christmas Eve. So I had whoever was at the hospital that
Hold
day
on,
as well.
important detail. Christmas
Yeah.
Eve, yeah.
Yeah. So it was like bare minimal staff. I got in there. They didn't believe me that my water broke because I was way too soon. So I told them my water had broke. They didn't believe me. And then they put me on the gurney and I said I have to push. And I was in the hall. They were getting me into the room and they were like, do not push, do not push. And I was like, what do you mean do not push? Like this is
How
what
do you
my body's
not
telling me to
push?
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they get me in the room. The doctor finally comes in and she just looks at me and she goes, "You're having this baby." And I said, "No, I'm not." And she goes, "Yes, you are. You're having this baby. You're doing it now." And I was like, "Okay." And he just was there.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a
So
very
you heard him
surreal moment.
cry. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they took him to the NICU, and how soon after were you able to see him, and what was that like?
So they took him to the NICU and I wasn't able to see him for a little bit. I mean, a couple hours like that, you know, he wasn't on any vents at first. He was breathing.
Mhm.
And then sorry, I'm going to get emotional. This is going to happen.
Yeah, of course.
And then he that night he went down and they had to intubate, like they had to do the whole nine, and he was on oxygen. So I didn't really get to touch him, honestly. Like it was like the little finger things, like, stuff like that. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard, and that's not uncommon. When I worked in the NICU, they called it the honeymoon period, that right after a baby's born, they have all of the good endorphins and hormones
Mhm.
and feelings that help them compensate and then may start to decline and need more support after
Yeah.
that, like, first initial moment.
Yeah. Yeah, but the NICU team was very good. They let us come in, we like stayed with him. We were there through New Year's, and then they had to
Mm.
transfer him from there because they were only, I believe, a level 3 NICU. No, they were a very they were in a very high NICU.
Right.
So we had to transfer over to a really good, actually great NICU in White
Yeah.
Plains. Yeah.
Okay. And so you got there and kind of had the care team it seemed like you needed and he needed too.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, White Plains was, I mean, sorry if I the names and everything,
Yeah.
but
No, yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with.
okay. No, they're a very high level NICU. They're emergency NICU. So, I mean, when he went there, it was scary. It's scary to transfer them and like, have the whole movement and they're like, "Well, it's been a week, so he can't stay here anymore." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a whole transition. Anybody who's ever had to take their child from one hospital to another knows all the work that goes inside of it. And then
Yeah.
you're in a new area, you're no longer a block from your house.
Mhm.
And we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but
Yeah.
I know other parents, other moms on the podcast and who I've worked with, those like why you're getting tearful now is just how terrifying and how scary those moments were.
100%. Sorry. It takes me
Yeah.
back every time. Like, my son is now 13, and he just went
Mm.
in for hip surgery 2 weeks ago, and I went right back to where I was when he was in the NICU and in the
Yeah.
hospital. Like, it just brings the terrifying moments back. You can't do anything, so I'm relying on someone else to take care of my child, you know?
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
a lot
takes a
like
lot of
grief too, that you experience grief, like, it never leaves you, you just learn how to deal with it,
yes, definitely.
and it sounds like it's kind of that experience too.
Yeah,
Mm.
100%. It's terrifying.
So he got transferred to the other NICU, and you kind of have had to find yourself in this, like, medical mother role, and you're like, "Wait, you were just born. I was supposed to still be pregnant now. Your due date hasn't even gotten here."
Yep. Yeah, yep. That didn't even close to get there. And there was just a whole host of different issues that he was dealing with. And it was mostly being told that he's preemie and they'll get better with age or when he, as he grows. But it was just so many things being dealt with at that time with the problems with the breathing, the GI problems. He couldn't swallow. He had a hole in his heart. Like there were just so many different problems and issues that I wasn't versed in. I didn't know.
Mm.
So I learned. I learned quickly. I learned very
Yeah.
quickly.
It's like getting into medical school, like, right away and having to learn
Mhm.
it all and having to be the expert because
Yep.
some of the surprising things is when the care team looks at you and like, "What do you think, mom?" And you're like, "What do you think? This is aren't you the one who's supposed to know the answers?"
Yeah. Don't you know this? No, but
What do
I
you
actually appreciated that because look, doctors are amazing and the hospital staffs and the nurses and the people that work in these places are amazing people. But you're also guessing. You're also educated, but it's not sure, I had so many different doctors tell me so many different things that didn't play out correctly or the way they told me they would or it's just I don't know. It's a
babies
lot.
aren't textbooks, and
Right.
so there's no, like, one size fits all approach, and
No.
it can be hard to navigate when you're just desperate for someone to give you, the answer or an answer.
Oh, you have no
Um,
ideas how many times I've heard, "This is very rare. This was very rare." I'm like, "Yep, if it's rare, he's gonna got it. He's gonna get it. Uh-huh."
yeah, okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
We've never seen this before.
Mhm. Yeah, so many times I've gotten that one.
Yeah. What do you think helped you the most during that NICU period?
Oh, my family. 100% was having their support.
Yeah.
Sorry. It was
Yeah.
13 years. It wasn't only a NICU, like, we stayed in 3 different NICUs with surgeries throughout one of them. Hospitals transferred back and forth. And until the age of maybe, I want to say 5 or 6, he was in and out of hospitals for aspiration pneumonia, for RSV, for, oh my God, so many different, so many different things.
Yeah.
And like still trying to figure out what the diagnosis is throughout this whole period. So it was just a lot. And like having my family around was the support that I
Mm.
needed.
Mhm.
I should have honestly reached out for more, but at the time it was like walking through fog. I mean, I didn't want anyone else's opinion, I needed to
Yeah.
figure this out for myself. Like I needed to know where I was taking him and like what, I could do for him to help him along the way. And I should have reached out. I really should have. I think it would have helped me a lot, but I'm thick-headed.
It's also really different now. I mean, 13 years ago,
Mhm.
we weren't searching hashtags on Instagram
True.
to find common things. Podcasts weren't relevant in terms of NICU parenting, and maybe there was, and I just don't know about it.
Yeah.
So I do think, like, the time has changed too. So, now it probably would have occurred maybe a little bit easier because of
Yeah.
social media, but you
And I
talk
was
a little
also
bit
very young. I was also I mean, I guess not very young, but I was 26 when I had him. So I was,
yeah.
like, just into all this. I was like, "I don't know what's going on."
Yeah. Of course, you're becoming a mom for the first time, learning
Oh,
how
yeah.
to just be a mom and what that
Yeah.
all the emotions that come with that.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk with you a little bit about his diagnosis
Sure.
and what it is and what is the diagnosis that they gave you that you eventually found out?
So I just received his diagnosis maybe in the summer in this past summer. He
Wow.
has 22 deletion syndrome, or also known as DiGeorge syndrome. It's basically on the number 22 chromosome, he's missing a piece of it. It didn't form all the way in oh, sorry. It didn't form all the way and he's missing a piece. So that affects his soft tissue. It could affect his heart. It could affect all different aspects of his functioning.
So it's almost like all the puzzle pieces were coming together once you
When
got that
I when
diagnosis?
I got that diagnosis, I think the geneticist looked at me like I was gonna just break down and lose it, and I looked at him and I was like, "Thank you. To have an answer is amazing. Like, thank you for that." Because so many times they turn around and it's like, "Nope, he's preemie. He's just preemie." And I'm just like, "It can't just be he's preemie." Like, we have seen specialist after specialist after specialist, and it took me to genetics, and I can't believe I missed that to begin with. So,
Mm.
yeah.
When we look back over the past episodes of Child Life on Call and what parents have shared, there seems to be this kind of correlation that comes up in 4 different ways to respond to a diagnosis.
Mhm,
And the themes that come up is like kind of the first one is shock and disbelief.
mhm.
The second one is fear and anxiety.
Yep.
The third one is sadness and grief. And then the fourth one is acceptance and hope. And it doesn't really mean, like, I'm guessing it doesn't mean that you fall into one category and stay there, but they probably all exist at the same time.
Yes,
And
I
I'm
think
just
you feel
wondering,
them all. I
yeah,
think you
but
go through
with
every
your
stage.
experience. Mhm.
Like, I guess my first stage would have been acceptance because I was just very happy to have that answer. But as I read into it and research it, it's just like, well, where does it go from here then? Now I have this answer. Okay, now what is he facing in the future? You know, so it's like a whole different bunch of questions, but at least it's leading me in that direction of where I
Yeah.
know to look, you know?
Yeah. How did you, finally get the appointment with genetics, or how did that come about for you all, and what was that process like of getting the diagnosis there?
Yeah. So genetics, I was never really referred to genetics in the first place. Like all these specialists never really put it together to go check, I guess. I When he was around 9, I went to see a geneticist, but then I had my daughter, so everything kind of fell to the wayside and he got, sick and all these other things come up like they do. It's life. And then that fell back, and then when I went back and I was getting no answers, so I went back and I said, "All right, let's do the geneticist." So we had to change insurances and do the whole thing, and we went to the geneticist, and we did the blood test, which he's used to. He sits there like a champ and he does it. And yeah, when they came back and they told me, I was super relieved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What has it been like since finding the DiGeorge community?
Uh, it's been different. Like, I'm doing my research now. I haven't joined any groups. I should. Like I said before, I'm very headstrong. I can do it myself. But
Yes.
I will. And I'm it's different. Like, I'm now searching for schools. Like, I'm in the process of looking for different schools. He's being pigeonholed in this one place because of the things they think he can do and can't. He he presents as silent selective mutism. That's how he presents at school, so he won't talk. So they don't think he
Okay.
can do much. So they put him in like a life skills program and just kind of push him along, where that's not what this is. Like, he just needs the right support to be and reach his goals. And that's where I need to be. Like, that's what I'm trying to find as of now.
And is that like the whole IEP conversations and all of
Correct.
that?
Yes, he has a medical IEP. He's had his IEP because of school absences, because of medical things for a long time
Right.
now. But it's a fight, honestly, to get him the services that are required that he needs personally to help him succeed. It's a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you go into the hospital with him, like you mentioned, still having things come up like hip surgery,
Mhm.
and it brings you back to like that really terrifying, scary time.
Mhm.
What do How do you support him now? How have things changed now that he can show you what he wants and
Mhm.
how he feels and all of that. How have you watched your kind of, I guess, your role in supporting him change?
Well, I am mama bear, so I will always, be
Yes.
right there. But he's so accepting and he's just so resilient. Like he'll go into these hospital appointments and he'll know he's got to sit there. He hates the IVs. But he'll sit
Yes.
there and he'll let them do it and he does what he needs to do. And it's just I I'm just very proud of him. He's
What
an
an
amazing kid.
amazing,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And
What are
that's
some
for
of
me. I don't even know. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite parts of being his mom?
Oh, really?
I
um
know.
He's an amazing kid. He teaches me all the time, like patience that you have for him, the love. Oh my God. He's so funny and he's so sorry. He's so talented. He's so creative. And it just teaches you to look at things differently. Not everybody is going to succeed academically or do things that you think they're going to do. It teaches you to pivot. It teaches you, to learn different things and be okay. It is what it is and you will be okay.
Mm. It's amazing, and I'm guessing he sees a lot of that in you. Honestly,
I hope.
being creative, learning how to pivot,
I
and
hope
I
so.
imagine yeah, yeah. Talk to us a little bit about Puffaluffs, and, we got to hear a little bit of the backstory, but what is your plan? What are you doing now? How can people get them, and where do you wanna see it go?
Oh, okay. Well, as of right now, like
It's
I
the
said,
magic
we're a
wand
small family
question, like
company.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that anyone that uses IV poles at home, in hospital settings, I would love to see them just be on the poles and just kind of make it more comfortable for people. Cancer treatments, like the enteral feeding people, like all these departments that can really use it. And it makes a huge, huge difference for these kids. That's what right now, that's what we're trying to do. You can find us at www.puffaluffs.com. And we're also on Instagram at Puffaluffs Inc. And you can find us on Facebook. I'm working on social media. It's a new thing for me.
Yeah,
So I'm
it's
getting
really
there.
it's really time consuming, for sure.
Oh yes, yes. And it's all new to me. I don't post, I don't do these things. So I'm learning as we go. But no,
Yeah.
hopefully we can have people discharge with these. Like if you go
Mm.
home with an IV pole, your option could be like you can take this puffle up home with you. That's the goal. And I just want to make things a little bit more comfortable for kids that are going through these situations because I've been there. I know what it's like. And it's scary. For my son, it was so scary. And it was having that piece of comfort with him that made a difference.
Does he have a favorite Puffaluff that he always wants to use?
He does. It was the giraffe. That's our original puff love. That was how it started, and he loved that thing. I
Mm.
would wash it all the time. Thank God they're machine washable because, oh, my goodness.
Yes, yes, for sure.
Yes,
That's so fun that he has a favorite. You had that one at conference, didn't you? You had it hanging up.
yes. We have a giraffe, we have an elephant, a unicorn, and a cow.
Okay.
And that's
So
what we
if
have as of now. But we're working on it, and we're hopefully putting out a new line soon.
That's amazing. So
Yes.
if parents want to order these Puffaluffs, they can do that.
They can. They can go to the website. We're actually 20% off right now. And you can go to there. You can order directly through the website. We will be on Amazon soon.
Ooh, exciting.
Yeah.
Mm.
We're getting places
Yeah,
slowly
you
but
are.
surely. Slowly but
And
surely.
I mean, it like for me walking through a sea of vendors at the conference, and I don't know, like there's a lot of pharmaceuticals as we
Hmm.
saw,
Oh,
a
yeah,
lot of
there are.
hospitals, people in suits trying to recruit doctors,
Yep.
and then just like this beautiful vision of these adorable stuffed animal covers on IV poles, and your face, and I was like, "Oh, I have to know her."
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it had to
Yes.
be so weird to see it. Everyone stopped there. They were like, "What is this?"
Yeah, yeah. You're like, "Isn't this pediatrics? Come on, guys, you should like"
Right? I'm in the right place, right? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah, it was a
thank you
great
so
experience. I loved meeting you. You were so sweet. Thank you so much. Yeah,
yeah.
no, I had a great time and it was a great experience.
Do you think you guys will go back again?
We are. We will be there
You
next
are?
year. We will.
Same.
Yeah? Oh,
Let's
awesome.
go
I
out to
can't wait.
dinner or something.
Oh, we definitely need to. I would love to. That'll be great. And it'll
Um,
definitely be my dad because you know.
yes, yes, of course. Well, I think I had mentioned to you too, my dad is my co-founder.
Yes.
And
Yes, you
so
did.
they can, like, sit there and, chat about what it's like to work with your daughter.
Oh, perfect. Oh, he'll love that. Oh, please don't get him started. Don't get him started.
Well, Jessica, do you have any other stories or things that you wanted to mention that I didn't get to ask you yet?
Um, I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. His diagnosis. Oh, with CPD, the cricophalangeal dysplasia.
Yeah, talk to me a
So
little bit
that was
about
his
that.
first diagnoses, I guess I would say. So the muscle used to swallow wouldn't open. It was just stuck and it wouldn't close, open. It just wouldn't move. So he
Yeah.
couldn't have anything by mouth for 4 years. We had 4 years of that, nothing by mouth. He had a feeding tube put in Colombia. That's when I was in the Colombia NICU.
Okay.
And in that NICU, I had to call a meeting with all his specialists to figure out what was going on. So I had to sit them all down and we had to come to some type of conclusion because we were there for over 2 weeks and it was going, nothing was happening. The doctors were switching on and off. I would see neuro, I would see GI, I would see all these other people, but nobody was talking to each other. Nobody knew what the other person was saying. They're ping ponging me back and forth. So I finally said, you know what? I want to see all the doctors and I want to see them in one meeting and let's figure out what's going on because I'm not staying here forever. Like we got to
Yeah.
get this moving. And I never realized how many people sat there and parents that didn't know any better or just didn't think of it or just didn't know to ask or say something like, we have a meeting? Can you put this together? Like you just sit there and you say, okay, this is what I need to do. Okay. And then you just let it happen,
Right.
but not asking questions sometimes prolongs everything.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? I just
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
It's almost like you're waiting for someone else to be the driver because it makes sense,
mhm,
right? Like you're in their care and
right,
then you have this realization, "Oh, wait, I can ask for things. I can
mhm,
advocate for this."
right. Explain
And
it to me. Let me know why this is happening, what you need to do next, and what your thoughts are. Not just tell me where you're going.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like your family meeting was productive when everybody sat together?
Yes, 100%, because that is at the time when they all moved and they said, "Okay, he needs to have a G-tube put in. This is what needs to happen." And we all sat together and they figured out the next steps. And that's
Oh,
how
wow.
he moved out of that NICU and onto back to White Plains where he eventually came home. It was 5 and a
Okay.
half months stay
Wow, that's a
just in the
long
NICU
time.
alone. Yeah, it was a long time. It's a long
Mm.
time.
Well, I having worked in a NICU, one of my favorite things to do was during those meetings, we had them regularly. I think some
Okay.
NICUs are good at practicing those and others,
Not
aren't
so
just for who knows, every function, every hospital works differently. But it was like that aha moment, and I would go and I would sit and I would take notes for the parent and say, like, "Your job is just to talk. Like, I know you wanna write everything down that everybody's saying, but, like, let me do that for you." And
Oh,
so
yeah.
that you can have, like, the full focused conversation and actually make it productive instead of trying to, like, "Oh, what was I gonna ask, and what do I do?" and all of that.
That would have made a huge difference. I had a little notebook that I kept with me, and I would
Mm.
write everything that they would tell me. I would write the questions I had, and I would be ready anytime the doctor walked in the room to shoot off questions.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
definitely knew I was coming.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's a really good message for other parents who are listening to this that you can ask and you can
Yes.
advocate for things like that. And you may be told no the first time, or we can't do that, or that's too hard, but just keep pushing because it can happen.
Yeah, or don't even be afraid to think that, oh, is that a dumb question to ask? Or maybe I shouldn't say that. Like, don't be scared. If you have a
Yeah.
question, ask it. Like, you
Yeah.
are the parent. You need to know. So I would say ask. And the hot staff, the NICU staff was amazing, I have to say.
Yeah.
The nurses that worked there, oh my God, overnight nurses, they were so sweet and so understanding. And oh my God. So the feeling of like when you're in the NICU, and I've had times when I'm visiting and then all of a sudden a code would go or he'd stop breathing and they'd have to pull me out of the room to do what they had to do. And that is so scary. But they would
Yeah.
go with you, and they'd like a nurse would stay there and just make sure you were okay while they were attending to your child. But to watch
Good.
that, it was like, and how the nurses handle those babies. You're like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize they were so like, I thought
Yeah.
they were so gentle, but that's not how it works.
No, not when they need to get in there and do their job. And it's like,
Yeah.
thank God they have this such specific and important skill to know
Yes.
how to do it. And then that way, like you can actually leave that night and sleep because you know they're in the best hands.
Yep. Definitely. It's hard to leave those NICUs. It's very hard.
It's really
They-
hard.
yeah, but the staff made it a lot easier. They made it a lot better. So
Well, yeah, we're so appreciative of all of the NICU staff, and they are angels on this earth for sure.
without a question. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything. I can't wait to see you next year at the
Yes,
conference.
me too. I'll see you soon. As always, I am just so grateful that you come to this podcast every week. Whether you are a parent or a child life specialist, you understand that the impact and you understand the essential need for parents to be not only at the center, but an active participant in their child's care, their child's medical experiences. When mom and dad and grandparent or whoever is that primary caretaker is thriving and empowered, the child has the ultimate outcome because they have that care team on the medical side, but they have a family who knows how to support them. So what can we do here? We can support families, we can give families a voice, and then we can change and alter the way that we interact in healthcare experiences so that the whole family system is supported. Please follow us on Instagram if you don't already. We have new podcast episodes every single Wednesday. And I, Katie Taylor, am just so grateful to have you as a part of this community.